After a very, very, very long list of norm-busting, democracy-eroding, generally cruel policies on the Trump administration, I gotta say I found the lawsuit, now supported by nearly 20 states, that asks the Supreme Court to throw out the votes of the voters in 4 other states as unnerving as almost anything I have covered, ever, including during this presidency. And that's despite the unlikely chance of it working. Today, the president met with a group of Republican attorneys general who are supporting this frankly undemocratic authoritarian effort by the White House. And they did it at the White House, while 106 Republican House members, more than half of the Republicans in the caucus, and every single one elected or reelected by voters last month, signed a brief supporting the petition to overrule the votes of millions of voters, to overturn the election result, to install the loser in power, destroy American popular sovereignty, and plunge the country immediately into the worst existential crisis since secession. That is not hyperbole at all. That's actually what would happen if this suit were to win. Now, it's not going to, we think. And so far, the courts, by and large, have acted as a check on the most nihilistic, authoritarian efforts of the president and his party. It's not an exaggeration to say that perhaps no single person has done more to combat Donald Trump's attempt to steal the election than Chief Democratic election lawyer Mark Elias. Thanks in huge part to his efforts, Trump and his allies are just 1 in 55 in post-election litigation. And Mark Elias joins me now. It's great to have you on, Mark. You tweeted earlier that you were shaken by this Supreme Court lawsuit. Why'd you say that?
Yeah, so let me start by saying I'm not shaken because I think it has any chance of success. This lawsuit's going to fail, just like all the other lawsuits have failed. So I'm not worried about that. What shook me was that, when Texas filed this case, it was kind of like, all right, Paxton is aiming for a pardon or is doing some sort of wacky thing, but this is not going anywhere. But then to see all of these states sign on and 100+ members of Congress, Republicans, sign on and support this shook me, because what it speaks to is an erosion of our democracy going forward. I mean, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be sworn in, but it speaks to an erosion of our democracy going forward, that Trumpism and its corrosive effect on democracy and democratic norms has now so thoroughly infected the Republican Party that 18 attorneys general used official resources of states to endorse this cockamamie theory, and that 103 members of Congress, many of whom were elected in these states, signed on to this. So that's what shook me.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out, I think there's about 12 to 14 Republican members from the 4 states whose votes they are asking to throw out, who are elected by those voters and those votes.
Yeah, and look, I was very public when Mike Kelly brought his lawsuit in Pennsylvania, try a congressman to throw out the votes there. I questioned whether or not Mike Kelly should be sworn in as part of the new Congress, because if he doesn't think his election was legitimate and things should be thrown out, then I think the House Administration Committee should look at that prior to him being sworn in. And I at the time, that seemed like an outlier position for one member of Congress to take. But boy, to see 103 members of Congress take this position and a dozen from these states, there is something fundamentally wrong with the Republican Party.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to be precise in the rhetoric I use here, because it's so grave. I don't want to sound nuts, and I don't want to increase the rhetorical temperature, but I want to accurately describe it. So I want to read to you part of Pennsylvania's state response. So Pennsylvania is the respondent here because a bunch of other states have decided to gang up on the schoolyard and try to take their votes away from them. And this is Pennsylvania saying the court should not abide this seditious abuse of the judicial process and should send a clear and unmistakable signal that such abuse must never be replicated. That is a very strong phrase, seditious abuse.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one thing for politicians to make outrageous statements in political commercials. It was another norm broken when Donald Trump made outrageous statements and lies using the bully pulpit and the official office of the presidency. it was another norm that was broken when Donald Trump and his campaign started adopting outlandish conspiracy theories in these frivolous post-election lawsuits. But it is yet a further norm and concern when we are seeing those same lies and conspiracy theories propagated by a large number of states and elected officials using the courts essentially as a tool to spread political false propaganda. And, Pennsylvania's brief speaks for itself. I think that Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin have a lot to be unhappy about, and their criticisms are well-founded.
I want to talk about this, the broader landscape of this post-election litigation. It's 1 in 55, I think, is the record. And obviously, you've been working very hard and are clearly an incredibly adept lawyer. But it seems to me also the case that they're losing not necessarily because of your lawyering skills. The biggest thing going against them is that neither the facts nor the law are on their side in any of this.
Correct. I would love to say that what we see here is spectacular legal skills on my part and the part of the other lawyers who have been involved. But the fact is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won a sweeping and convincing victory. I mean, none of the states that we're litigating in is the margin particularly close. So the theories that are being advanced by one wave after another of lawyers on the other side are just outlandish. I mean, the facts are ridiculous, and there is no legal support. So honestly, a lot of what we're doing is traffic copping these cases that get filed. We oppose, they get dismissed, but it speaks more to the breadth of the victory of the president-elect than it does the courtroom skills.